Hello, this is Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com, and my guest today is Alistair Field, Customer Success Architect at Coveo in New York. Coveo describes itself as the world's leading cloud-based relevance platform, using applied AI to deliver relevant experiences in all digital interactions, from search to recommendations to personalization. And Alistair describes his customer success architect role at Coveo as proactively providing technical expertise and feature function enablement to the CS team to help them deliver positive business outcomes for customers. Recently, Alistair wrote a blog article that caught my interest, entitled KCS Needs a New Home in Customer Success. And reading this article inspired me to reach out and ask Alistair if he'd be interested in being interviewed on the topic of KCS, or knowledge-centered service in general, and its relationship to or with customer success management in particular. So, Alistair, first of all, a big warm welcome to you. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Rick. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
My absolute pleasure. And secondly, Alistair, before we do kick into the detail of knowledge management and KCS, do you mind just giving us a little bit of a background of who you are, how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. As you rightly say, current role is Customer Success Architect within the Customer Success team here at Coveo. We've been growing very, very rapidly over the last couple of years since I joined the company. So we built this layer of technical expertise with respect to line of businesses, and my personal interest and expertise, let's say, is knowledge management, intranet's digital workplace, which has obviously come to fruition and prominence in the last 12 months as we've all been forced to work from home and work remotely. So it's been right up my alley. Prior to that, I was a knowledge manager for an engineering company. Actually, I guess if anyone looks me up on LinkedIn, they'll find out it was Siemens, part of Siemens. So I ran the knowledge base for an engineering simulation company. And I got into knowledge management from a support role. So my background is mechanical engineering. I got into support, technical product, engineering customers. But the support we ran, I now know as really a customer success role. We did everything. We did the quarterly reviews, we did the support, we did the exec summaries and things like that. So really it was a customer success role, but wrapped with support, had my dedicated accounts. And it was through that interaction with customers that I got into knowledge management. I hated repetition, so I got into feeding and templating and canned responses to be able to solve problems. And that's how I got into sort of knowledge management, community management, and that brought me through to Coveo and here today.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to ask you a bunch of perhaps very basic questions, first of all, if I may, because I think that we just need to clarify certain terminology before we get too stuck into the details of KCS. And I'm going to start with something really basic, all right? Because I think I understand, but I'm not so sure that everybody really gets the difference between, and perhaps also the relationship between, data and knowledge. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. For me, data is the information you have in your hand. That's that's the resource you take and use. Knowledge is what you do with it. Right? We can all go and find a piece of information, but how do we know what to do with it? And really, that's where someone like a customer success manager or a support engineer, those people, they know what they're doing with it. They have the information to hand, and they're able to serve and get benefit from that piece of information. And that's the distinction between the two. The data feeds knowledge, and then you have to do something with it.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a slightly different opinion. Yeah, interestingly, I usually find I so rarely disagree with people. My own opinion is I would say what you've just described is wisdom, which is the decision making. So knowledge I would describe as the understanding of it, of data in a context. So data.
I think there are various levels. It does sort of. I think at various levels, and I feel like coming from the support as well, it's almost as everything with customer success and anything to do with customers, it's a journey. There's certain times when certain pieces have certain clarifications, and I think it just depends on where it is at that time and the need. But absolutely, wisdom is then that next level up of.
But I do take that point there as well. So yeah, absolutely. So in terms of which one is nearest to the decision making, it's most definitely is the knowledge, as you say. So it's the understanding and making sense of data. I would say. Yeah, would you agree with that?
I think it's a fair point. I think it's fair. And then where you go on from there is wisdom when you get more experienced and use that.
Hopefully.
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 He's using it correctly. As long as understanding it and using it correctly.
Checked afterwards, right?
That's good.
All right. So look, we've talked about the relationship between knowledge and data. Like, data's the raw material. It's the stuff we actually have in its raw format, and knowledge is the sense we make of it in order to make decisions. I think that's what we're both saying. So, all right, with that in mind, then, what is knowledge management? Because that expression is something that I'm familiar with, but I would say has been around for quite a while. Knowledge management. So, what does knowledge management mean?
So I think people get this misconception that knowledge management is sort of almost content management. They look at it very much as just managing pieces of content, creating pieces of content, but it's actually broader than that. You know, like you said, we have the data, we have the information, but how do you get it into people's hands so they can gain that understanding? It's not just collating it, but it's delivering, it's, you know, and ensuring it's in a manner that can be consumed, it's in a manner that can be read and absorbed and shared. You know, so the further afield you go, you could start including community management as part of knowledge management, because you're managing communities where people are sharing information. How accurate is it that one person is sharing over someone else? And so it's a broader field than just content and articles and things like this. It's all about the delivery and the, you know, the workflow to creating, reading, sharing, and embedding that within the company to make it useful for the business outcomes of the whole company, not just the individual.
Right. So in the same sense that customer success management is about maximizing customer success, knowledge management could be argued to be about maximizing knowledge.
And to be honest, that's where I started writing the blog. That was my thought when I first started writing it, was the similarities between a knowledge manager and a customer success manager. Coming from the two together, that was how I started writing the blog, and it sort of morphed into what it became. But yeah, I completely agree.
Excellent. We have a meeting of minds. So, all right. We've talked about some of the basics. Now I want to get to this new, for me anyway, new terminology that I hadn't heard of before, which was what made me read the article in the first place and get interested, which is KCS, Knowledge Centered Service. So can you tell me a little bit about that, please?
Sure. So we've spoken broadly about knowledge management, but KCS is Knowledge Centered Service in its latest form. So in about 2016, it was labeled as Knowledge Centered Service. Prior to that, it was actually known as Knowledge Centered Support. And so the methodology was devised, I want to say late 90s, by the Consortium of Service Innovation as a way of embedding, capturing knowledge during the workflow of supporting customers. So the idea being that, you know, as you're serving someone, you're responding to support tickets, you're responding to, you know, issues customers are having, you're capturing that piece of information and presenting it to a wider audience, you know, for scalability. So you're publishing it. And that workflow becomes embedded in, and everyone joins part of it, and the whole sort of infinite loop of creation, reuses, review, it gets evolved as people discover new solutions and things like this. And so this whole methodology really took a wave in the support sector. And then over time, it gradually, obviously, as the service sector embraced more people, which is where my article sort of started to reflect on, well, with the more, you know, customer success managers now being at the forefront of interactions with customers, we're getting to hear what's going on. Maybe customer success should be contributing just as much, if not more, to the content that's going through the workflow.
Makes total sense. So we've moved from knowledge-centered support to knowledge-centered service to potentially knowledge-centered success.
Possibly.
Customer success.
Version 7, I believe. So we're at version 6 right now, KCS version 6. Version 7 is coming out soon. And we'll see what they deliver with that one.
So just look out. If you've got a title with an S in it, watch out.
It's all about success.
It's all about the S word. So knowledge-centered service is like a broadening of knowledge-centered support, right? I mean, that's how I would, I guess, see that. They recognized that it was no longer, you can't just sort of compartmentalize it.
Yeah, it's not an individual function. It's not just support. It wasn't just a one function. And sort of, you know, the research we see and the research I read around is as well, the sort of requests that come into a support team are sort of gradually changing as well. If you imagine that support is traditionally a break-fix type environment, right? Someone has an issue, they're asking, how do I fix this?
As opposed to like a how do I do X,
as opposed to the customer success manager, which is, you know, strategic. You've got this, let's talk about doing it in a different way. And as one of my colleagues quoted, and it's in the article, you know, product managers and support know how things are supposed to work. Customer success managers see how they're actually being used. You know, we see what the customers are doing, because no one always uses everything exactly how you anticipate.
That's for sure. So could you give perhaps like an example of how the knowledge-centered service, or KCS, was or is applied in the worlds of customer support and or customer service in the first instance, so we can sort of imagine in our heads, if you like, what that might look like.
So the way, a reasonable way to consider it is, if we start from scratch, right? Whenever you contact a help desk, obviously the support, yes. And we're mostly thinking about technology worlds, right? You log online, you go to a knowledge base, you maybe do some self-service, you search to try and help yourself.
Right.
Ideally, you find the answer, because then that's deflected, but as far as the company's concerned. But if you don't, then you've got to open a ticket. So when you open the ticket, in the back end, the support person is reading that and saying, okay, there's no public content for that. If I write an article on my response and publish it, anyone else who has that same question doesn't need to come through to support. They can help themselves. And when people help themselves, they feel empowered. It's a better experience. That, people don't mind finding answers by themselves. So the whole workflow is, I've answered to you, I create an article, I publish it basically the same day. The quality of the articles, which is another part of KCS, it doesn't have to be perfect. Right. The idea of the article is it's fit for purpose. Yes. So if you can read it and get the answer, that's good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect imagery and grammar and everything else. As long as it's fit for purpose, people will be able to get to the answer. And so get it published as quickly as possible. Any requests that come in for the same piece of information, either they find it themselves, or other support agents or other people who are serving that customer will have access to the article you've written and be able to support quicker. So it's the whole loop of being efficient and providing customers the ability to serve, and your colleagues the efficient use of knowledge as well.
So it's the repurposing, dual purposing, and multi-purposing of information to maximize its value to the company.
Absolutely. It's all about reuse. It's all about reuse, efficient. Don't repeat tasks. The more it's reused, the more it gets reviewed. Because if someone's using it, it means it's still accurate. If someone stops using it, then you start getting into that whole sort of life cycle of an article, right? People stop using it. Okay, what's wrong with it? Is it not fit for purpose? Is it not solving? Has the product changed? Do we need to look into it? And so you have all these. This is where the knowledge manager comes in, because the knowledge manager can look at the analytics of an article. The knowledge manager can then take into consideration how something's being used and does it need manually reviewing rather than just the reuse review of the workflow.
Which is yet another great, to my mind anyway, another great way of comparing a knowledge manager with a customer success manager. Because I mean, I would argue that customer success can occur without a customer success manager. And similarly, knowledge management can occur without a knowledge manager. However, the knowledge manager, because they understand best practice in knowledge management, can probably do a much better job. And whereas without one, we might get one or two uses out of our piece of information. With the knowledge manager in place, they'll say, no, you can do this, you can do this. Have you thought about that? You can use it here. Because they've got that experience and expertise in best practice relating to knowledge management, they apply that knowledge to the situation and deliver much more value. And that is exactly, to my mind, the value of a customer success manager to the customer, who could get some value out of the product they bought anyway. But because there's a customer success manager saying, well, yeah, you can do that, but I tell you what, I wouldn't do it like that. I'd do it like this. Let me explain why. Delivers the maximum customer success to the customer in the same way perhaps as a knowledge manager can deliver the maximum sort of knowledge to a company.
That's it. And I think, I don't particularly like the term, but it's used a lot. The CSM is the quarterback of the relationship with the account. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the terminology, but I know it encompasses it well, right? There's the one person who
can I just check? Is that the guy who's like you throw the ball to when you're in the scrum, and then they stand there and decide who they throw it to?
So let's say it's the number 10 on the number 10, whichever number. But yes, so there's always this one person, and I think it's the same thing.
They're the one who chooses the play, kind of thing.
Chooses the play, tells everyone where they should be, dictates what's going on, dictates who needs to be involved.
For non-American football.
For the non-American folks, the quarterback, the referee, the coach. But yeah, for sure, the knowledge manager has that similar role. And that's just the position I found myself in, even in support.
Right.
You know, I don't know the answer to everything. And I was listening to one of your other podcasts you did, and you were talking about, you know, it's okay to say I don't know. In your consultancy days, it was okay to say I don't know the answer to that,
Yeah.
but I can go and find out. And I think that was the value I brought as a support engineer. I got to know people in the company. It's the same value I do now as a customer success architect now, but as a CSM, get to know the people in the company who know the answers, because those are the ones who have the more direct dialogue with the customers. You know, I can't know every answer. I can do my best. I'm a pretty technical person. I like to get in the weeds and do things and solve things, but there's always that level above. And so knowing who they are, knowing where the information resides, knowing how to search. I'm going through this now of trying to teach as our team's grown. When I started 2 years ago, I was number 10 CSM maybe. We're at about 25, 30 now after 2 years. And so we've got all this influx of people, which means there's a lot more information to be shared, enablement, and
Right.
not everyone knows how to search. You know, part of knowledge management is also how do you find the knowledge?
Okay. Yep.
And the tactic of searching as well, is a bit of a skill. And so that all takes a little bit of education and thought process behind.
Right. And when, of course, with 25 people, you always have the possibility of having 25 laptops with, you know, all of which have some of it on it.
Well, I'm a big proponent of working out loud. I like to work. I know if I find something cool, I will share it. I'm not, you know, I try not to use email. In all honesty, I try not to use email because I think in email things are going to get hidden. Working in Slack, working in communities, working straight into Google Docs where anyone can pick it up and find it is better for everyone.
Much better. Yeah. Yeah. And as those tools get better, because I mean, one of the things that I find with a lot of these tools is that they